everyone. My name is Maurice Coleman, and welcome to the Information Go Wild podcast brought to you by the San Jose State University High School. I'm one of your hosts.
I'm Paul Signorelli. We're here with our podcast in which we discuss all things library and information science.
I'm your third host, and my name is Essraa Nawar. And today we're very fortunate to have our guest from Louisiana librarian and author Amanda Johns. Amanda is currently working on the front lines of censorship and book bans and has experienced the good and bad of modern librarianship.
Welcome, Amanda. We're delighted to have you here with us talking about the successes and challenges you are seeing in local library activism.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. We want to jump into having you immediately tell us a little bit about what got you to the position that you're in. But first of all, we like to lob a low ball question just to get things going, which is, what makes you happy?
Books make me happy.
Yeah.
I love a good book. Something that makes me even happier is when you actually get to meet an author and tell them about how their books make me happy. I love that even more.
Well, we can tell you how happy we are to meet an author and how happy your book made us.
Thank you.
I want you to talk a little bit about how you got to the situation of writing the book.
Basically, I'm a school librarian, and I have been a school librarian, or I've been an educator for 24 years, a school librarian for 10. And I love libraries. And I went out a few years ago and spoke as a resident in my own community. Just happened to be a librarian, but I spoke as a resident in my community at a public library board meeting and became the target of some extremists. And once I became the target of extremists, I decided I could either be quiet or I could do the opposite and get louder. And that is what I chose to do, get louder and talk about the importance of libraries, public and school, and the importance of books and their stories. And yeah, I've been harassed ever since, but one thing led to another, and I was offered a book deal. And when you're offered a book deal, you don't pass that up.
That's kind of cool, Amanda. Actually, I'm reflecting on my own story when I got some hate letters like 10 or 12 years ago when I started doing some diversity and interfaith work. I think in the beginning I was really scared, but after that I kind of take these as a badge of honor that I'm kind of doing and disrupting things. And when I heard about your book and your story, I kind of like, oh, this is one cool woman doing and changing a lot of things. But I really want to ask you about like the network, the support that you got after you became out and about and your name was all over the place and you started and you wrote a book. How did your network, professional network specifically, play a role in all of this?
It's been huge. My professional learning network. In fact, I call a lot of people that are in my professional learning network my professional learning family, because so many people have become family members. Really great friends of mine. I actively, and I don't know, I still to this day don't know why I did it, but way back in 2018, I knew I wanted to build up a huge professional learning network. And I don't know, I couldn't foresee the future, but I was very active about it. And I was using social media and different librarian conferences and organizations that I volunteered for to just amass this huge network, mostly to learn best practice and what I could do in my own library, best practice wise. But it's really come in handy the past few years. I don't think I would have been able to continue facing the constant death threats and the constant harassment if I didn't have librarians and other people that were, in my corner that I have become friends with through a conscious effort to build up my professional learning network, starting all the way back in 2018.
Can you actually, just a follow-up question really quick, a lot of people actually struggle to build the network, not necessarily the social skills or the skills to build the network, but really reaching out, following up. How do you keep track of all those people that you meet at conferences? Sometimes, you get handed cards. Now it's those electronic cards where you get so excited about meeting those people, but then the next day you get bombarded with the emails that you have been missing for the couple of days that you left the office. So how do you keep up? How do you remember all those people?
Well, I do have a notebook and I would go after conferences because I volunteer a lot for professional organizations with state and nationally. I would always just keep a notebook, and I had states. Like it would be like Texas. Who do I know in Texas? Who do I know in Connecticut? Who do I know in Massachusetts? And I would just put little notes down, and I would put beside it if they're a public librarian or a school librarian or academic. And you friend people on social media, and I just made an active decision to make sure I was going to their pages and asking questions and following up or asking, how's your day? And just really building up a relationship with probably 200 or 300, 400 people. And then it just kind of blossomed into thousands. And so at this point, I don't need a notebook anymore. I just remember it all. But yeah, I can name librarians almost every single state. And it's just, I think it's so important because when you're a school librarian like me, I'm alone in my school library. I'm the only one that's a school librarian on campus. And so it's not like a teacher where there's multiple teachers, science teachers and social studies. So you have to look outside the school, and that's just what I did. And it's been hard to keep up, but I take a lot of pictures. So when I get to meet them in person, I'll take pictures, and I do have in my notebook pictures of people to remind me who's who.
Bit of a follow-up on your personal network, Amanda. You talk in your book about your GoFundMe campaign and your suit in Louisiana Supreme Court. Among those you mentioned were the folks from Every Library, John Kostaka and Patrick Sweeney. We were lucky enough to have John on our show last month. Would you mind recapping how Every Library jumped in to encourage and support you and highlight what our listeners can learn from that experience if they're facing similar challenges or misrepresentations and outright lies that threaten your reputation and the work you do on behalf of the students and the public you serve?
Library was probably the first major organization to reach out to me when I first started being targeted and harassed. And that was through one of my friends from my professional learning network. But yeah, I reached out to John almost immediately, and they came in. Every library, they know how to do this. They're so used to helping. They have the strategies, they have the platforms, they can tell you what to do. One of the first things they did for me was kind of help me navigate, this is what you do and this is what you don't do personally. And then they helped me build an alliance within our own community. So they helped us build up a pro-library alliance to combat some of these falsehoods that are being rapidly spread around the community. They even have a fundraising platform, which I've never used, but I do know people who have used it. They swooped in right from the get-go with real actionable thing. A 30-minute conversation with John or Patrick or anybody at Every Library will give you just pages and pages of notes on what to do as far as building an alliance and talking points. And they'll even break them down into tiered talking points, like what's the most important things that the highlight reel, so to speak, when you're talking to, say, a legislator or to a council person or a member of the community, because there's different talking points and different strategies for each person. And they really helped me understand that. They're also been very instrumental in helping us understand how to promote and pass our library millage, which was our tax renewal to fund our public library. I can't say enough good things about Every Library. They really were the very first with actionable, like, here's what you do, A, B, and C. And if this doesn't work, here's D, E, F. And, it's, they know exactly what to do.
The whole thing that you're talking about, what you face in terms of going to a public library hearing and then having that turned on you as a school librarian, and how Every Library and others jump to support you at a very difficult time. It's absolutely hellish, and it's not something that the average student going to library school these days would even think about. What should we be doing to prep our students for this ever-increasing nastiness that's out there, directed at people who are just trying to serve their communities to the best of their abilities?
Yeah, it's the attacks. I would like to say that what happened to me is unique, but it's not. It's happening to not just librarians, but even our residents in our community that speak out in the library get targeted and harassed. Something that I like to reiterate to library science students is that social media is a double-edged sword. You can use it to help rally cry, and get the word out and the truth and things like that. But it also can be very taxing and draining, and you have to protect yourself. I was very naive. I tend to think that I'm a friendly person most of the time. And so I looked at people with good intentions, and I had my whole life plastered all over social media. That included pictures of my child, my family. And so what I've learned from this all, which I learned from every library, but particularly also through PEN America, is how to protect yourself. And PEN America has a harassment guide. So anyone who I always recommend, whether you're a librarian, an educator, even to my mother who's in her 70s, I'm like, if you're going to go speak, you need to follow these tips first and foremost. You need to lock down social media. You need to remove pictures of family. Because unfortunately, nobody is off limits to these people. When someone wants to target and harass you, they will post your address, they will post your phone number, they will post your family members, their faces. It doesn't matter if your child's a minor, they'll post that as well. So you really have to kind of scrub social media from all of that. And I wasn't putting anything, horrible or negative on my social media, but I didn't know that they would take the good things about my life and use it to harass and scare me, and use my family members' pictures to post on things.
Yeah, I can only imagine, but I also am reminding, I was listening to a podcast this morning on my way to work, and I can't remember the name of the person that was being interviewed, but he said something that things are get worse and better at the same time. And I kind of like, that is kind of cool. And in reflecting on your story, I kind of remembered you right away, because yes, things got worse for you, maybe personally, but also look at all the attention, also all the support, and then the book, and comes also a movie and or a documentary movie. And one of the things that I've been talking about over the last 2-3 years, I've been involved in the Future of Libraries projects across the world in many ways, and also reimagining how we as librarians and library professionals do our jobs. So, and getting into all kinds of things. And I'm personally also working on a documentary. But I learned recently that your documentary was Sarah Jessica Parker, who's the producer, which I'm a big fan of. She picked your book, and she announced at the Red Sea Festival in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, that this movie is going to be launched in the Sundance. So how did this collaboration come about? Did they reach out to you? I want to hear all about it.
They did reach out to me. The director is Kim Snyder, and she's done so many documentaries. She did a haunting one on the Sandy Hook shootings called Newtown. And through my professional learning network, I have amassed, so many friends that are school librarians. And I guess my name was passed along early on. And they contacted me and asked if I would be interested. And, I was hesitant at first, because anytime you speak out, there's backlash. So I have had a book, but every single time I am successful, these people look at it as, we have to bring her back down. So it's ever continue, like it never stops. But they asked me if I would like to be a part. And at the time, I only knew who the director was. And I said, sure. She showed me, I took a call. And when I saw that so many of my highly esteemed colleagues were involved, people that I know have been doing the work, out on the front lines, people who I would trust with everything. And I'm like, well, if they're trusting to do this, I can do it as well. And so I agreed. And at the time, I didn't know who was producing it. I just knew the director and looked into her work. I didn't know who was producing it till after we had already recorded everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there what is it all about? Is it about the story, the book ban?
It basically follows librarians who are, and I think they use that term, on the front lines, that are, fighting for democracy. They follow public and school librarians who have gone out to go speak, are using social media, are lobbying against anti-library legislation. I read a tagline for the documentary, is listed on the Sundance page, and it says that it's librarians are seen as the quiet profession. And so they want to show that we librarians are not always quiet. We're boldly standing on the front lines fighting for freedom. And I haven't seen the entire documentary. I've seen bits and pieces, but I hope from what I've seen, that's going to come across is that we're not going to quietly let people take over our country's libraries, whether it's a school or a public library. We're going to stand in their way and fight for what's right.
And are you going to be at Sundance in late January?
I am.
Wow.
Yes.
Congratulations. I'm excited for you and for all of us, honestly.
I'm just really excited to get to go. There are some librarians in the documentary that I've been friends with for years, but we've never met in person. We've only Zoomed or phone calls and text messages. So some of the librarians, like librarian Martha Hickson in New Jersey, I cannot wait to see her in person. Going to be really great to be all there together, getting to share in this film that I think is so important because I think it's going to misspell a lot of it's going to dispel a lot of these mistruths and this disinformation about libraries.
And let's turn back to your book, That Librarian from Bloomsbury's Publishing. There's a moment on page 197 where your commitment to activism burns brightly in a book, particularly when you say staying silent is a kind of complicity. What can you say to our listeners and our students about overcoming their own reticence about breaking silence on issues that are important to them, particularly your expertise when they know the result can be the sort of trauma you've experienced for having taken a simple step of speaking out against book banning at a public meeting?
Well, everybody has to use their own privilege and their own platform as they see fit. And not everybody is able to go and say, do what I did, which is speak out at a public meeting. That can be very daunting for some people. It was very daunting for me. I didn't like it. I've gotten used to it now, but staying silent. If I was silent and I just sat back and let all these things happen in my community and let them destroy our library, that would be me saying that I'm complicit with this. And that is not okay. It's not okay to silence voices and stories. And so I chose the route of speaking out. I chose the route of going and speaking at public meetings and speaking in the legislature and writing a book. Speaking out doesn't have to necessarily take that form, though. You can speak out by emailing, if it's a school library, your school board. You can make phone calls. You don't have to put yourself in front of the cameras, which, because most of these meetings are streamed online. You can make a phone call. You can send an email. You can write a letter. You can write a letter to the editor. You can fill out petitions. Some things that we had last year in the Louisiana legislature, we had 9 anti-library bills. Well, we sent in 44,000 emails to combat these anti-library bills, and only one passed. And that was 44,000 people that chose to use their voice, maybe not by going and speaking and standing and speaking in a committee hearing, but they emailed. And that can be just as important. And you can only do what you can do. And for me, it's important to be there and speak out regardless, because I am in a position of privilege. Everything about me says privilege. Like my whole life has been a privilege. So for me to not speak out, I wouldn't be doing what my parents raised me to do, which is to, champion the underdog, love thy neighbor, speak out and say something when you see something that's not right. But again, that takes many different forms.
I sit here almost stunned when you say that you have had nothing but privilege, because reading the book and going through day by day what you experienced when you first got hit in the face with all this and how nasty it all got, it's like, that didn't feel like much of a privilege to me. The nice thing is, having put it into the book, the word is getting out more and more, obviously. I checked with some of the people over at San Jose State University earlier today, and at least a couple of the professors have the book on recommended reading list. Doesn't seem to be in any of the courses required reading yet, but we're headed that way because of what you say. All of that leads me to ask you if you would address our students and our peers throughout the country in going down that path of activism just a little bit more, and talk about some of your experiences with local library groups and what that tells students and your peers in terms of what they need to be doing to advocate on behalf of the right to read, the freedom to read.
So a lot of these fights, we're seeing attacks against the profession. trying to devalue the Masters in Library Science, trying to criminalize librarians, the book banning, censorship. There's so many facets to this. But it's basically an all-out war right now on libraries and in public education. And it can be very daunting. I know when I was getting my degree, I didn't have any clue that this was going to happen or this is where my life was going to take me. It's been very, I've had a lot of lows the past 2.5 years. I'm still being harassed. Like it's still happening. Like just this week, my face is plastered all over every local community Facebook page with horrific things said about me, and it's never ending. But to me, you have to fight for what's important to you. And some days are going to be really crappy. But we have to, I remember I heard Stacey Abrams, I was fortunate to hear Stacey Abrams say we have to measure our progress we have to measure our success in progress, not victories. So we're going to lose some battles, we're going to win some, but every time we keep speaking out and we keep using our voice, we gain progress. And we just have to keep moving forward. And so you will have setbacks in which, there have been days when I've thought, is this even worth it? Like nothing's going right, but it is. Because one other person will have heard me say something about libraries and it will have spurred them into action in their own communities. And you never know the ripple effects that you're going to take. I've gotten the ripple effects you're going to have on people. I've gotten so many letters from people saying, this is happening in my town. And I read your book and I went and spoke at a meeting, or I went and sent that email. And, all we can ask of people is that they speak out, but also what I think it's very important for library science students or anyone in education to know is that we have to do this with empathy and integrity. We can never stoop down to using the same tactics. I mean, these people have made the most horrific memes of me. I am not doing that back to them because I am an educator and I am thinking of the children. I want to set a good example for kids. And these tactics that these people use to harass and defame are not tactics that I want my own child or any of my students to emulate what they're doing. I want them to look and say, well, look what Miss Jones did, or look what my mom did. And she stood firm and she kept on message, but she did it with kindness and empathy and integrity. And for me, even though it's not really been a cakewalk, I look at it in the lens of I do have privilege and I'm a white, straight, cisgender woman, and I will always be this, and I will always have that privilege. But I look at people whose stories are being erased, and they will always be from historically marginalized communities. These stories that are being, shut down, they'll have to live with that the rest of their lives. I can put up with some hate on their behalf for 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years, however long it takes. I just think it's important to set a good example to kids and speak out, but do it with kindness and empathy. Not that I feel kindness and empathy at all times to these people, but you have to, I look at, in the book I wrote, there was a chapter, Are You There, Michelle? It's Me, Amanda, how to go high when they go so very low. And it's very hard. And you just have to keep on, stay the high road.
But I mean, I have a follow-up question before I speak to you about kind of like your activities on social media. But so you spoke about how you took all the hate and all the backlash. How about your family members? Not just your professional colleagues. Like when you go back home, has it affected your family members? How did your family react?
Yes, so I live in a very, very small town. So right now my face is plastered on every Facebook group all over the community with horrific things being said about me. My daughter is 17 now. At the time when it first started, she was 15. And so she's in the era of social media now. And and she sees things. And so I have to sit down and talk with her about it. It's not fun. It's horrible to say, but my child has always said, Mom, I already know that about you. I know you didn't do these things. I know you're not doing this or saying this. And so she, but it's very taxing on my family. My parents live next door, and my sister lives behind me, and they attack my family and my family as well on social media. So I've had to tell my parents and my siblings and my child to just not respond online and just let me know if something happens. But we can't even I can't go grocery shopping in my community. Like, it's a small town. Do I think I'm going to be attacked physically every time I go out? No, but there's a good chance that someone's going to say something horrible to me. And I usually do have my child with me at all times. And so I don't want to put her through all that. So I get my groceries delivered and try to do what I can outside of my town.
Speaking of social media and capitalizing on this conversation, I mean, everybody has a love-hate relationship with social media. I advise everybody to be active on LinkedIn and, all the professional platforms that get the word out there, whether about your project or sometimes even personal branding. And other people's like, oh, it's a waste of time, especially if you go on Instagram and you get a reel after reel. Sometimes actually these reels are beneficial, right? But still, it wastes a lot of time. And also, we have a problem, especially in the library world, that people don't know how to use social media effectively. But looking at your feeds, you've been extremely well versed in how to effectively engage people. So perhaps you can, give us some tips and give, the students that are in the high school and really the whole wider library community on how to use social media for advocacy.
Yes. So I have several social media accounts. My library has social media as well, my school library, and I found it to be highly effective as an educator, as a school librarian. There's this misconception that librarians are just checking books in and out, and I wanted to show my community we're so much more than that. So we have I have a very large, or not large, but my community follows me on social media. To me, that's another opportunity to show the kids how to act online and what to say and do. Always make sure that you're telling the truth, and it's so hard to navigate. It's one thing on school library social media to promote your library, and I don't do engage back and forth. I just post. Those are just posts. I have personal, and the personal social media does allow me to interact with my professional learning network. Sometimes I notice that particularly younger librarians or younger educators, they are scared to block people because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm like, no, you protect your peace. If you don't like what somebody says, block them and move on. We don't have to entertain everybody's thoughts, but you can use social media to get the public talking about the positives of your libraries, the positives of your own professional career, but you don't have to give people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week access to your life. You can shut it off, you can take breaks, and you only put out there what you want to put out there, and block. Don't be afraid to block people.
That's a good thing.
It's an entire block party. Well,
I have to, I have to. I'm like, I used to try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and then now I'm like, nope.
well, speaking of not giving people the benefit of the doubt, Amanda, you are, how do I put this? You're working with some lawyers in a couple of different places, it seems. Can you tell us a little bit about the case that is going on in Louisiana? Just had a ruling, and then briefly about as much as you can about what's going on in New Jersey. So I think that will give people an idea of the scope of what you're dealing with.
So I have been in a legal battle for over 2 years in Louisiana with two men who made some very false statements about me on social media that started all of the hate and harassment. And they said horrific things about how I advocated for the teaching of certain sex acts with children, and I give children pornography and erotica, and very false. So I've been in a legal battle with those two men for over 2 years now, which it just hit ahead in the Supreme Court 2 weeks ago. And the Louisiana Supreme Court did rule in my favor. So we are going, so that fight continues. Basically, I probably have a couple more years left on that. The legal system is so slow. But I'm suing two men for defamation. And the judge said that she ruled I was a public figure, which at the time, I'll concede now I'm a public figure. At the time, I was not. At the time, I was just a school librarian, and I spoke at my own community, meeting. I'll concede now, but that I'm a public figure. But defamation is very hard to prove. You have to provide proof for facets of defamation, and one of those is being actual malice. I can prove all of that, so that's where we're headed. In the Louisiana Supreme Court decided that I have a right to have the courts hear my case based on merits. I'm also in two more lawsuits with the same man. There is a man who lives to my understanding, he lives in New Jersey, and he has worked in conjunction with the two men that I'm suing locally. This man has done the same thing, only from New Jersey, but he's also traveled here to Louisiana to do it. And so I filed two federal lawsuits, defamation lawsuits against a man, one in New Jersey and one in Louisiana, for the same man, because he has defamed me, or I'm alleging he has defamed me in both states. And those are federal cases.
Wow.
This all becomes so circuitous, and reading the book gives the nuances. I'm afraid that we're being so subtle in our language here that viewers that don't know the full story may be going, so what's going on here? But you talked explicitly throughout the book of you being charged with suing these people, which was not true, taking them to court over their feelings of what should be in a library and what should be community-based, which is not true. And you make the point over and over again, no, folks, I'm standing up for my right not to face defamation, and to say, when you accuse me of putting material in an elementary school library that shows kids how to have anal sex, that's not me and that's not us. And excuse me, but that's defamation. When you get down to that, I know your head just must spin, and there must be days when you feel like you've stepped into an alternate multiverse that nobody I've ever seen has been able to film. Again, you do such a great job in the book of bringing it back home after describing the extreme depression that caused, and the loss of friends, and your whole perception of the relationships you thought were solid. Again, tips for those who are going to library school right now thinking, oh, I'm going to choose some good books and maybe do some story time. And it's a whole different world. What do we do?
I don't know how we got to, well, I have theories about how we got to this point in society, but I think what people on the offset, you hear, oh, she's too happy. That's something that gets said about me. She's litigious. These lawsuits, the state lawsuit, these men post my home address on the internet. One has tried to get a job at my school to harass me. And I don't want to get too into what they've done to me because we are still in an active lawsuit, but this is not a case about books. This is a case about two men targeting a woman, and saying things that weren't true. And it's the same thing with the man in New Jersey. This man, who I do not know, posts whole blogs, hours of videos, hundreds of tweets about me, saying things that I have never done or said. I think the one that really got me, that I told my attorney it's time to file the lawsuit, was when it was said that I carry a gun to I don't want to use the word murder, but I carry a gun to wield against parents who object to me sexualizing their children. And I'll say this, I don't have a single complaint from a parent at school. So nothing's happening, like nothing like that is happening. But when you put something like that out there about a school librarian, that damages my reputation. And this man who lives in New Jersey is followed by my local school board representative. He follows him on social media and sees these things that are not true. I shouldn't have to live like this. I shouldn't have to live with these men, and it could be women too, but I shouldn't have to deal with these people saying these false things about me over and over and over. And I am in a position that I can fight back because I do have a GoFundMe and I do have support, and not everybody does. I will say it's worst case scenario though. I know a lot of people who have spoken out that haven't faced nearly as much as I have. It kind of depends on where you live in the country, a small town, large town. I know librarians in larger cities don't get as much of a hyper focus like I do because it's part of being in a small town, part of that dynamic.
So Amanda,
Well,
after all of these things that are happened, how optimistic or pessimistic are you feeling about, reducing the level of incivility that you're describing in your book? I mean, you've been through a lot, so and you've been fighting and you're gonna continue to do this work. And I think there's a lot of other people that maybe we've haven't heard about them. But as you said, I loved what you said just earlier, the ripple effect, domino effect. So how do you feel? Hopeful, not hopeful?
I feel hopeful. I think when people go so low, like these people, like not just the people that have harassed and defamed me, but what we're seeing all across the United States, where these people are so personal in these attacks and they go so low, they don't know when to stop. You would think that they just keep on until the pendulum swings back and people start to wake up and say, oh, this is looking like harassment, which is kind of what's happening for me a little bit. It's people are starting to say, oh, they're obsessed with her. This is not healthy. This isn't about libraries anymore. But I think we're seeing that in other communities. I'm seeing that. I've seen it in Texas. I've seen it in Florida. I've seen it in Florida where it seemed like the entire government in Florida was pushing to ban books, and they started losing some cases. And the governor of Florida started to see that it wasn't as popular of a platform as he thought it was going to be, and he started to dial it back. I think it's a pendulum that's ever shifting. And we just have to keep moving forward and keep speaking the truth and showing the great work that libraries do, the great work that we do as librarians, and sharing those stories, all the stories of, people from all walks of life, because everybody deserves to have their stories represented on the library shelves. And we just keep pushing forward. And I think of it like, I've never said this in an interview, but I think of it as kind of like Wonder Woman has those, she's like deflecting.
the magic bracelets.
So
There
you
you
just,
go.
you go through life deflecting and
What are
you
these
just keep
people?
moving forward.
What are these people getting out of this?
Awful. I've gone through a lot of therapy to understand that. I think these people have a hole in their heart and they're looking to fill this hole with something. And some of these people have taken libraries and they say, oh, well, I can tell all these lies and, I can stir up people and look like this hero that's coming in to save children because everybody wants to save children. That's why I love children. That's why I'm a librarian. But these people will say, we've got to save the children from the horrible librarians. They want to look like heroes. There's this, and the way they've gone about it by tearing people down and by sharing mistruths is horrific. I think also a lot of these people are in echo chambers and they rile each other up, and hate feeds hate, which is why I always continually say we have to fight back with love and kindness and empathy. Maybe you don't feel love for them, but you kind of put on the loving face when you speak to them, because you can't combat hate with more hate. You can only, at the end of the day, love and kindness is what's going to win, and the truth is what's going to win, and we just have to keep pushing. And yeah, it's going to be, I think the next few years is going to not be so great, but I think this will all eventually be over. And when it's over, I can look my child in the eye and I can say, I was on the right side of history at this moment in time. And that's all that matters to me.
Speaking of sort of being on the right side of history, etc., let's talk a little bit about one of the organizations you're involved with, Libraries Building Libraries. What inspired, look at, I see that I want to bring some joy into this interview. what inspired you and your colleagues to start Libraries Building Libraries?
But it's like a baby organization and we have zero funding, so we're trying to build it. But basically, two librarians who I met through professional learning network, Dr. Andrea Trudeau from Chicago and Tom Bober from St. Louis. We've become really great friends. And our friend Dr. Andrea Trudeau visited Tanzania 2 years ago. And when she visited Tanzania and Kenya, and when she was there, she met Dr. Wasonga, who is the founder of the Jane Adeni Memorial School for Girls in Kenya. And they just struck up a friendship. It's one of those, it's the ways you build up these connections. And Dr. Wasonga and Andrea had kept up this friendship. And she just said, I want a library for my girls at this school. And Andrea came back to Tom and I, and we said, let's make this happen for them. Like, we can do this. And so I said, well, let's not stop at one school. Let's see how many schools we can help. And so we founded a nonprofit, Librarians Building Libraries. And our first project will be to the Jane Adeni Memorial School in Kenya in the summer of 2025. Hopefully, cross fingers, we're working on funding. But we want to go and help them build up a school library. And what we learned from that in that school, a self-sustaining library, where we teach the girls themselves how to be their own librarians in their school because they can't afford a librarian. Teach them how to process books and shelve books and bring them the books and how to put them in the computer and on the shelves and build a model that we can help other schools, hopefully in the future. So I'm very excited about this and what we can do for these girls.
You know, among the three of us, we have a tremendous amount of affection toward Essraa and refer to the fact that you cannot pick up a magazine without seeing Essraa on it, or a TV program or an award ceremony. And as we were looking at the different things you're doing right now, I felt like we have a riff on that with, you can't pick up a new nonprofit without seeing Amanda's name on it. You're also involved with Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship. Quoting from the website, it's an all-volunteer grassroots organization dedicated to fighting attempts to ban or restrict books based on subjective standards of inappropriate content. Tell our students, please, how you got that going and what they would have to do a similar thing.
Hard as you would think. It's a lot of work, but once you build your coalition, things can run pretty smoothly. That started about 2 years ago. I built a local library alliance in my own community, and with the help of every library, and every library had helped to other neighboring communities in their own battles with censorship in libraries in Louisiana. And so the three alliances got together and said, well, why don't we do this statewide? And so I am a founding member, but we do have an executive director, Lynette Mejia. She runs our website, our newsletter, everything, but we have a board of directors. And basically, we just meet and we help other people, and it's an empowering organization. We try to empower not just librarians, but the average resident in Louisiana who wants to help. We give them the tools on how they can help their public libraries, whether that is building a library alliance in their communities, writing emails, helping combat bad anti-library legislation. And so I'm very proud to be a founding member of Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship. It's just something that, we started to help libraries, and it's grown, and now, we successfully beat 8 anti-library bills for a state in Louisiana, which is a majority. We have an extremist majority controlling the House and Senate, and our governor is an extremist. And so we thought we did pretty well in the legislature last year, building that coalition. But it's just getting like-minded people together and saying, what are you good at? Or what are you good? Like, I'm good at speaking. Some are good at building websites. Some people are good at social media, and we all just come together and we put our heads together and the tools together, and it all comes together as one.
Is there a key word in here that we might want to share with the students, like collaboration?
Yes, collaboration and coalition building. Collaboration is key. And to me, it's everything is a team effort. Everything. And I feel bad a lot because a lot of times I'm the one that's doing all the interviews for Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship and our local public library alliance and Librarians Building Libraries, because I have a platform and I'm asked to interview a lot. But it's team. like we're a team. So nothing that I do or say came just from me. It came from a team. So collaborating with each other and finding each other's strengths and weaknesses and how you can all fit together like pieces of a puzzle is key. And you have to take, egos out the door. You have to understand that you're all in it together. And sometimes I need to step back. Sometimes I need to step forward. Sometimes others need to do the same. But honesty, when you're building these coalitions and these teams and collaborating, honesty, always be honest and discuss your goals. What is the goal? We can never lose sight of the goal. So the site, with Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship, the goal is to protect our libraries in Louisiana first and foremost. And so we always go back to our goals when we're collaborating.
Amanda, you've been interviewed a lot, right? Like, I mean, I was telling you before the recording, I was listening to you and I think every interview was different and you've said different things, but is there anything that you haven't tapped into, something that nobody knows about until now after all those 2 years?
Well, I don't know. I think everything's
Everything's out there
been
already.
covered.
No secrets.
I know I've talked about this. I will say it's very important to step back sometimes. Even in our coalition work within my own community or with across the state with the Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship, even with librarians building libraries, when I'm working with people, I sometimes will tell them I need to take a week off for my own health. This past week, it was because I had the flu, but sometimes for your own mental health, you need to just step back, and that's okay. The fight's still going to be there. And I don't think I say that enough in interviews, that it's a very tiring and taxing work on your mental health, and that can turn into something physical. I've had physical ailments because of the mental stress. You have to take care of yourself because it's like in the airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first because you don't want to burn out, and you want to, make sure that you're okay so that you can help others. That's very important.
So not getting a cold, I guess, is one of the ways to maintain your health and wellness. What are some things you do when you're not getting a cold to maintain your health and wellness and your perspective?
I recently started watercoloring.
Really?
I'm not very good at it.
That's okay.
I actually got inspired because I was so fortunate to meet author Amy Tan in person. And I had met Amy Tan. I met her in New York City a month or two ago, and her book Backyard Bird Chronicles had just come out. And I was reading it at the time that I met her. And there's a lot of watercolor birds. And I happened to be in Central Park in New York City. I'd never been in New York. And the display stuck out to me. It was like, learn to watercolor. And I was like, just like Amy Tan. And so when I'm feeling stressed, I will get out my watercolor book and my little kit, and I'll just start painting the stress away.
Thank you so much. We feel so lucky to have the caliber of people in our industry and in information science in general on this show. We hope that, as always, this inspires the people that are watching it to follow in your footsteps, to learn from the challenges you've faced and to find that positive spin that's so difficult to find that you do so well. Thank you so much for being part of this and sharing what you've been able to share with people.
Thank y'all for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you all for joining us. And thanks to the San Jose State University iSchool. Our guests come from traditional and non-traditional places like Amanda Jones. We invite them to share insights and adventures from the field with us, along with what inspires their work. So thank you, Amanda, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Remember to join us next time for the Information Gone Wild podcast, where we discuss all things library science. And importantly, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss any of our episodes. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.